Thanks for joining us for the interview of the 2022 candidates for Asheville's mayor. I'm Kit Cramer, President and CEO of the Asheville Chamber, and I'm joined by one of our great public policy volunteers, Greg Burnette of First Citizens Bank. This interview will be with candidate Kim Roney. All interviews will be posted to the Chamber's website at ashevillechamber.org/2022 elections. Kim, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to jump right into the first question. By 2040, our metropolitan statistical area is expected to have added almost 100,000 people. What do you think is the top priority for how the city will manage that growth?
Well, planning and zoning, collaborating with the county with their new comprehensive plan will be important so that we're growing along transit corridors so that folks don't have to rely on a car to have access to education, jobs, childcare, and groceries. Affordability is an issue now, and it will continue to be so. So that's why I think that we need creative cooperative solutions for affordable housing, working with partners like our nonprofits and faith communities that are already bringing solutions to the table, as well as our Asheville Buncombe Community Land Trust. Public safety continues to be an issue, and we want to make sure that public safety is working for everyone in our community, which for me means diversifying our public safety response. And I think that we can share in accountability and successes together by having meaningful public engagement around what we want to see together as a community.
So Kim, we know that a body that can work well together will be more effective. So please describe your preferred style in making policy and developing consensus with fellow members, and give us an example where you were able to make a change as part of being a team.
Sure. Well, I'll start with an example. I'm very glad that with the Talbert lot, which is the lot next to the transit center downtown, we were looking at 4 different elements of funding on that same council agenda. And by cascading the funding, we were able to work with the city manager's office and for me to reach out to colleagues and show that we actually could use our most restricted funds to purchase the Talbert lot, which will mean that we use bond funds that we committed to the community we would use for transit and for housing. In this case, we're going to use it for transit and housing. So we're maximizing our available resources through the bonds, which will hopefully build trust for future bonds. And that is a win for our whole community. Because we are working together in a public setting around that, meant that other community members could pitch in with their professional and lived experience to help achieve that goal as well. For me, I have a lot of concerns around how we do our public work in the public. Right now, we have a check-in process where we meet with 2 council members and the mayor with a fully staffed agenda without minutes. And that does help us to inform on the issues, but a lot of times it leaves out the opportunity to engage with the greater public. So then we end up with a lot of public comment about the process and not around the issues. I think that if we were to bring out some of these difficult conversations we're having with the intent of engaging the public, we would actually get through some of these difficult issues with at least talking about the issue and not about the process, which may be adding to some of the conflict that we're seeing today.
How do you balance policies like increasing density in certain corridors as a way to accommodate additional housing with neighbors who may be uncomfortable with growth and or change?
Great question. So when folks live close to resources, that means they have more time in their day, they can spend more time with family, they have more access to education, to growing a business, to just being able to exist in community and to whether it's be a part of a parent teacher organization, et cetera. So we want people to live close to resources. However, there is pushback around having density on our transit corridors because of that hesitancy to change. But I think one of the things that we could do that would help to mitigate the impact of these growth on transit corridor options is to have a community benefits table for commercial and residential conditional zoning development. So that would look a lot like what we set up for our hotel overlay map, where there are a certain amount of points that you can achieve for a residential development so that it can skip through a council process, because we've already reached some of these issues that the community has concerns around. What does it look like to have renewable energy for new apartment buildings? The answer that we can't have solar on an apartment building because there's so many other things on the roof means that we're setting up those new residential units and new neighbors without a long-term plan for renewable energy. So renewable energy should be on that list. Access to transit can be on that list. Contracted with minority and women-owned businesses can be on that list. So I think we could hear and gain information from the concerns we're hearing from community and create a more streamlined process so that we're able to develop the units that we need. But this is a big one for me. I'm really concerned that until we find a way to make sure that all of these new apartments aren't just going to be short-term rentals and ultimately a lodging use, we are going to continue to have pushback in the community, because those residential units will be built not for the people who need them the most, not for the people who work here and live here, but for speculative property and for private equity firms and for lodging use. And I know that our community is reached an exasperation point with lodging use in neighborhoods. So we have some difficult challenges ahead of us, but we have neighbors that care. And I'm really honored to serve with smart, talented women in our community. I know we can come up with a solution for this. I think a community benefits table is part of it.
Kim, what do you think the role of the business community is in our city?
Integral. I'm really so glad that we have so many opportunities to support locally owned businesses, minority and women owned businesses, living wage businesses. It's going to be how we continue to have a successful and hopeful future together. I also know that as a small business owner myself, when you're deciding how can I contribute back to my community that gives so much to me, it can be hard to make time when you're handling the issues of family and running a business and sometimes working the counter while someone else is taking care of their family. But I see it. I see our business community contributing back in, whether it's on boards and commission service, contributing to the political side, contributing to policy making. So in general, I would say it's integral. And I think it's one of the things that we do well and could continue to do better, especially when it comes to building coalition around the living wages that we know our workers need to be able to afford housing.
Kim, in general, where do you get your information about what's going on in the community?
Well, my neighbors are very outspoken. So I get a lot of emails. I get phone calls. I do take the temperature of what's going on in social media. I do make an effort to provide information. Having been in City Hall for 8 years, I started out in the press row as the producer of 103.3 Asheville FM's News Hour, which we started to help be able to get information out to the public when decisions are being made that were maybe a little complicated and hard to dissect. And it was an outlet that folks weren't previously having access to. So we have the newspaper and print media outlets. We didn't have a radio outlet at the time. So a lot of times it's a reciprocal effort to not only to receive information, but also to ask for information. If we have a situation that's challenging, like the noise ordinance, our team will go in and look and break it down into a spreadsheet of like, where are the concerns? Where's the commercial noise concerns? Where's the music noise concerns? Where are the business owners' concerns? So that we can attempt to reach out. I do that personally when folks reach out on email as much as possible. But it is something that I am glad my neighbors generously provide proactively.
Well, and what will you do to reach out to the business community to give them a voice?
Well, that is one of the things that the chamber does well, is bringing forward events and opportunities to have panels and to listen. A lot of small business owners reach out directly. I do participate in the West Asheville Business Association meetings by invitation. And I would encourage any other business organization or neighborhood business organization to reach out directly. My email is kimroney@avlcouncil.com, for city-related matters.
Kim, what is your stance on the issues that are affecting businesses downtown, such as camping and panhandling?
Well, you know, I would start with saying that I do not run a business downtown. And so I have been asking a lot of questions of the folks that do, and to have a deeper understanding of what that looks like on a daily basis. One of the big concerns I hear is that we need more places for people to take care of their human needs in a dignified way. An example of that is bathroom facilities. Right now, we have bathroom facilities that are open. We're looking at potentially using ARPA funds to fund new sort of long-term, by design to be long-term bathrooms called a Portland Loo. So it's a significant, serious upgrade from a porta-john. Another issue has been around where can people put things after they've used them? Because we have neighbors experiencing homelessness, but also a tremendous amount of visitors. And folks like myself, like I was in between meetings, I stopped at Pritchard Park to have lunch, and I had a to-go container, and then it's like, where do I put it if the trash can is full? So I understand that infrastructure is a big issue, as well as maintaining our infrastructure, because if the trash cans are full, if there's not a place to put sharps, like a sharps disposal container, which we could have on all the trash and recycling facilities beside them, it won't work if we don't maintain them and empty them on a regular basis. So that's the kind of, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's being able to meet people's needs in a dignified way, that's going to take collaboration. And I would hope that the chamber would be at the table alongside groups like Dogwood Health Trust and the Tourism Development Authority, because we're gonna achieve success if we work on this together.
What do you consider to be the city council's role in maintaining public safety?
Well, the city council's role is to oversee the budget plans and policies that are presented to us by our top staff. So council giving instructions to the city manager's office, for example, could include our strategic priorities that are set at the retreat. We maintained reimagining public safety as a key priority from 2021. So that means we're going to keep pushing forward and working on that. We could give instructions for what diversifying the response looks like, whether or not we should use strategic partnership funds to work towards youth mentorship, violence interrupter programming. And also when we think about being able to respond with the right person, with the right training, with the right tools for the situation at hand, that means that we should provide oversight for what training policies look like. We don't get into the minutia of that, but we can give instructions on what our expectations are. I also think that it's important for me, and also I would hope for the council as a whole, to use our leadership role to work with the county on a pilot for the community paramedicine program, specifically for the city of Asheville. The Buncombe County Community Paramedicine Program right now is currently addressing opioid overdose issues, but also the overlapping issues with homelessness and mental health. And they're doing that with trained professionals, with peer support specialists. They're already serving downtown in West Asheville. So I'm not sure that a lot of folks know that it's already happening, but it does seem we need more of it. So one of the roles that council could play is giving instruction to the city manager to join that pilot program. And I'm among the people who has already requested that.
The most recent version of the Bowen report says that we need more housing at every income level. How can city council promote more construction of housing?
That gets back to that community benefits table, right? I think that when we have the restrictions of available land that we do have, when we get into what our expectations and our standards are, I get that we need to have housing at every income level. But if we're only building the most expensive housing and not addressing the folks who are most vulnerable to displacement, then we're going to keep pushing people out to the edges, which means farther away from resources, longer commute times. Then we have to run transit in every direction, and we simply can't afford to do that. So this is a really big issue with planning and land use. Once again, connecting with the county, working towards shoring up our Buncombe and Asheville regional transit before we expand beyond. But when it comes to like being able to have affordable housing for our most vulnerable, I think that looks like potentially looking at the land use incentive grant to see if we need to tweak the metrics so that the expectation is really clear that we are going to build mixed income housing. We're not going to segregate folks based on class and access to resources. So I know that I'm not among, I know that I'm among the people who see the need, but if we're only building sort of the Teslas of houses, then we're not going to see the more deeply affordable units come on board. So I'm not going to leave one group behind for the sake of another group. It's not when I see all levels of affordability, it has to include deeper affordability in that mix.
Kim, in 1 minute or less, what sets you apart as a candidate?
I would say my showing upism, whether folks see that as a gift or not is up to them. But I've been showing up to boards and commission meetings and civic meetings for 8 years now, for about between 10 and 30 hours a week. And that's addition to running a small business and my nonprofit work. I do care, but I do think that it is a gift I'm offering for my community, is that I show up and that I'll listen. And even if we have differing opinions, I think that we should have those conversations together instead of excluding people.
All right. Well, Kim, thank you for being with us today. As a reminder, you can find interviews of other candidates at ashevillechamber.org/2022 elections. And please be sure to vote in our primaries on Tuesday, May 17th. So Kim, thank you again for your time today.
Thank you so much. And for more information, folks can visit Roney for asheville.com.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.